or join the team at sport-social.co.uk.
Hello, welcome back to the Masterclass in Man United Tactical Podcast. I'm your host, Haider Rubbani. I'm joined by Blanchette as always. Guys, before we start, give us a follow on at TF Masterclass. Give myself a follow on at Haider_Rubbani. And give Rob a follow on at _Rob_B. You know the drill. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, retweet this if you see this on Twitter as well. We want as many people in this conversation because it's going to be a reflective one today, Rob. Man United obviously have lost 4-0. Each week we think it won't get any worse. It does get worse, unfortunately. This squad finds a way to embarrass us even more as fans. This unacceptable, chants from the away fans of "you're not fit to wear the shirt," which is very, very fitting for this group of players. But we're not going to be hysterical. We're not going to scream and shout. We're not going to, be emotional about this. What we're going to do is we're going to break this down. We're going to look at all the problems holistically, and we'll almost cast ourselves back to the last summer, where we'll look at where did it go wrong? Did it go wrong in the transfer window? Obviously, then we had Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's demise, and then we had Ralph Rennick come in as well. Man United didn't appoint a permanent manager. So welcome back, Rob, as always. What were your thoughts after yesterday? Horrific, wasn't it?
Horrific. And just when you think it's got as bad as it can be, it gets a tiny bit worse, doesn't it? So I think it's just indicative of where we are as a football club, both from the top to bottom, not just the team itself, but as a club, both as supporters, as an ownership, the position of Manchester United in the pantheon of English football. We're about where we should be, I think, in the league table. What do I always say, Haider? The league table never lies, and it certainly isn't lying at the moment. But the Brighton game, as disastrous as it was and as horrible as it was, it's happening for reasons, real tangible reasons. And what we're going to try and do today with the masterclass is it's not just going to be focused on the Brighton game, as we would normally do the post-match wrap-up of tactics and stuff that you guys join us for. We're trying to find the reasons that we've spoken about for 12 months. Because on this show, we've highlighted 3 or 4 really big points that we said, if this happens this season, the season will collapse. So we said that from the start when Ole was the manager, going back to the transfer window. And I think that's kind of where we are. I think that's when you look at the players' performances yesterday, they feel it, they see it. Their motivation levels have just crashed. They feel under pressure, under siege. The fans feel it. And the only people kind of getting away with it, I still think, are the owners. So there's a balancing act here, and we'll try and address some of those major points for you today.
There's a massive, major disconnect between the fans and the players. I don't think I've ever seen it this bad, and we've seen United finish seventh under David Moyes. We saw United, obviously, we've gone on this run of nearly a decade now without a title. But I don't ever think that during that period, Rob, we've ever had to go at maybe we have had to go at the players, but to this level of not even trying. I'm not even running around. I'm not even doing their roles. There's definitely a disconnect between Ralph and the players. It's quite clear to see. They're not playing for him. I think he's cocked out. I think he cocked out weeks ago, to be honest with you. Didn't get who he wanted in January, and we'll talk about that. A lot of comments here, there's a lot of blame towards Ralph. He's the worst manager since Sir Alex Ferguson, all this sort of stuff. I think we need to break it down in the wider picture. I don't think Ralph is blameless at all. But I think that to put the blame at his door is what we've been doing maybe for the past decade with our managers, right? And then these players have got away with it. The owners have got away with it. I think that what we're seeing here is, and we knew this already, but just how deep the problems are and just how much of a big job this is now for Erik ten Hag. And we will talk about him, obviously, as the season ends and we go into the summer and he comes in. But it is such a monumental effort. And in some ways, and I still say this, while the football's not been great, while the results have been poor, Man United needed someone like Rennick to come in my opinion, to almost lift off the cover and be like, these are the issues. And he'll walk out the door. He might not even do his consultancy, the fact is, issues are now bare for the whole of the footballing world to see at Manchester United.
He's completely exposing the players, and he's exposing the ownership, and he's exposing the bad recruitment. So absolutely what you said there is totally correct. You can't say that Ralph is blameless, but he's certainly not to blame of why Man United are where they are. He just simply isn't. Now, he puts the tactics out there. And as again, I said that during the Brighton game, you can see with these players that this is not a tactical issue. Why do I say that? I say that because when you look at their positions and their work within their positions, none of them are doing it. Like literally none of them. Even De Gea, to a point when you think about what his job is as a goalkeeper on the deck with the ball, he's not really doing it. He's just kind of doing what he needs to do rather than what he should be doing. And you look at that, the fullbacks do it, the centre-backs do it, the midfielders do it, the forwards do it. It's key that Manchester United are losing these games with no shape and no style within their system. It doesn't feel like any of them have ever played these systems before. But of course they have. They all have. They all know these systems. So this is why I say it's not tactics. I think what you said also is completely correct, is that the players have clocked off and the players are not playing for him. So that's a big part of this, is that the players have gone, the season's over. I've booked my holiday abroad. I can't wait to get away. I'm probably going to get dropped from my international squad because I've been horrible season long, and yada, 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 and so on and so on and so forth. But this is not a tactical issue, because I try and crunch the numbers when I'm watching them. And these players, it's not like they're wildly being told to do stuff they don't know what to do. They're just not doing it, Haider. They've just decided, well, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it the Harlem Globetrotter way, as I call it. I'm just going to kind of play. And you know what? It worked against Brentford, 3-0. I'll just do it again against Brighton. I'm sure it will work again. Oh, no, we lost 4-0. So this has been the season, I think, in a nutshell, going back all the way to Ole. And I think Rennick's been on a hide into nothing, because these players, whether it's ego, whether it's self-belief, whether it's the dressing room changing from last summer to where we are now, whatever's changed in that time, it has absolutely ripped this football club to shreds.
I thought you were going to go on a rant there for a second, but no, I agree with you. It's, I think we as fans expect certain things, don't we, Rob? Yeah. And when we watch our football team, we expect, we expect shape and tactical, solidity, in my opinion. We expect, the team to come together, to work hard, to do their individual roles to a high level so that the whole system can function. Mm-hmm. We expect them, to show a bit of passion. Like we were getting olayed by Brighton yesterday. They were passing the ball around. And this is Brighton we're talking about. I mean, look, they've done a fantastic project over there with Graham Potter. They've got great owners. They've bought some fantastic players. There's a midfielder that was man of the match yesterday that should have been playing for Manchester United, but we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But just the bare basics. And something I do want to say is that I think Ranieri's reign, and we saw this yesterday as well, is such an indictment on the players. And I'll tell you why. Because when he came in, the much fabled gegenpressing 4-2-2-2 formation obviously was something that he did try and implement. And for a short period of time, it was working. We were seeing the numbers improve. The metrics, expected goals and expected goals against, were both, better than they were under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. We were seeing small incremental sort of improvements. We're thinking, look, this is something that we could build towards. But he abandoned it very, very quickly, Ralph did. And that's an indictment on the players. And this is what people don't understand. People are blaming Ranieri for this. He had to abandon it. And I said this in the last podcast, or the one before, that I was a bit disappointed that he abandoned it so quickly. But he abandoned it because these players couldn't or wouldn't do it. And this is a point. And when people are going in at Ranieri, like, I just don't understand how you can't see the bigger picture. And this is why we say the players. So when Ten Hag comes, are they going to do this with Ten Hag when he comes in? Is he going to be allowed to get these players out who decide that they don't want to do it or they don't feel like doing it? And this is a problem with Manchester United over the past decade, is that a manager will come in and the manager's handcuffed, Rob. He's handcuffed. It's almost like golden handcuffs, right? You'll have a lot of money to spend, but he's not allowed to get rid of Phil Jones, who's been given a new contract. Eric Bailly's been given a 3-year contract. He's not allowed to sell who he wants and bring in who he wants. So ultimately, at the end of the day, a manager has to do with players that don't fit his philosophy and his principles. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you see performances like that. And that's what I see with this whole situation. And this is why I just don't understand how people can't see the bigger picture here. Ralph isn't blameless at all. The horrific results, horrific performances, which have been going on, by the way, since the beginning of the season. But ultimately now, he's the foreman. The media are going at him. Oh, he's only managed 88 games in 10 years. I've seen this from big journalists, Rob, going in at him. And the problem's above. The problem are who owns the club, who's run the club into the ground for the last 15 to 17 years. And it's so... this is why I'm happy Rennick's come in and he's exposing it and he's saying what the fans have been saying. And this is why I'm just puzzled, because the fan base are doing what they always do. They turn on the manager, or they turn on this, they turn on that. And when the bigger problem we know is above and what's been going on for the past 15 years.
They'll always turn on the manager and they won't turn on the player on the back of their shirt. So this is kind of the bottom dollar with Man United fans. So this is not Man United fans' fault. You know, everyone has their own opinions. One of the things we said when Rennick got the job, and we did shows on Rennick before he got the job and said, this is the kind of coach you need to come in. Okay, he's not managed recently. He's been more of a sporting director, but it's about the philosophy of coaching and implementing that coaching. And when you talk to everyone in the coaching community that knows anything, who are not supporters, but actually work in the industry, they were like, this is a good appointment. He will find out who wants it and who doesn't want it. And I think that's where we stand today, Haider. And we said that at the start. We went, if this doesn't work tactically and we watch it every week and he tries to stick to the tactics, there's going to get to a point where he has to change the tactics because it's not working. And we're going to see that if the god of gegenpressing cannot get a team to do that counter press, that's not him. He's not going to say, well, let's play a system that's more aggressive. And it's noticeable, Haider. He said it yesterday. He said it in multiple games recently. He was like, yeah, we won that game 3-0 like against Brentford. We're still passing the ball sideways. I don't like it. We're still passing the ball back. I don't like it. So he's telling us what he's telling them, but they're still doing it, aren't they, Haider? They're still just doing it because they think they're bigger than him. And they're doing the one thing that players always do when there's a change in manager. You're going out the door, mate. I'm on 250.
Exactly.
So you're off. I don't need to listen to you because the next bloke's coming in and they're already chatting. I think we had a little glitch there.
No, I'm back. Go on, Karen.
About that. So yeah, we're just saying there. What about your jobs this week, last week, and the last few weeks? And I've said this also. Players generally, I don't think of our caliber and where we are that turned on by top four. They should be, because that's the bare minimum, but they want to win trophies. And as soon as they were out of the trophy conversation, they were gone, Haider. You could see up here. The Brighton game, it's obvious. They're just not connected. They don't really care. And the other thing is they have no camaraderie. No one likes each other in this Man United team. You can see it. There is no love between any of them. They turn up for work. They're like office workers. And you know what? I'm going to clock off the minute 5 o'clock comes and I'm gone. And that's what they're doing. So, you know, we can spend hours going on every individual position, but we're not going to do that. We're going to kind of look today as well about the fundamentals, about why Man United week in, week out now are failing against teams like Brighton that you should not fail against. Because let's be honest, Haider, it started with Ole, didn't it? We didn't like the tactics. You started losing to Watfords of this world who've gone down. And we put it on the manager and we said, we're going to see what these players want to do. Do these players really want it? What do you think the answer to that is, Haider?
No. They don't want it. They don't care. And the thing is, there's some really good comments here, Rob. So I'm going to read some of them out. Thanks, guys. Keep them coming as well. Look, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, give us a retweet if you see it on Twitter as well. Comment saying, you know, people are weird after everything over the last 10 years. They turn around and point to Ralph. That's just shocking. There's another good comment here saying, I think Ralph isn't the underlying reason. Have the players stop taking any instructions from the coaching staff? Every aspect looks terrible. Let's just cast back to when Ollie was in the role, Rob, and you saw people are forgetting the leaks from when Ollie was there. You know, when there was one report, it always sticks in my mind vividly. I almost I was laughing at the time because it was just so ridiculous. But now, actually, I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, I actually think poor Ollie, to be honest with you. And I wasn't always the biggest fan of Ollie, but there's one article that came out where it said he asked the team, he got the senior players and said, what's the issue here? How can we fix it? What's the problem? And the response was that the players were basically saying that Ollie was the issue. His tactics were the problem. He had no tactics. How do we solve this? Well, Ollie was the issue there. You're seeing this now that it doesn't matter if it was Ralph. People are forgetting that they weren't listening to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and McKenna and Carrick. It's not just a Ralph thing. And this is why you've got to gut the squad. But what I do want to talk about, we'll go into the players' attitude a little bit more, but let's talk about why United conceded 4 goals again yesterday. It feels like 56 goals or 55 goals now conceded. Manchester United's worst ever Premier League season. In terms of goals conceded, points as well. I very much doubt we'll beat Palace in a couple of weeks' time. It's absolutely shocking, to be honest. We could end up in the Conference League, which is, God forbid, but that's where Man United are at the minute. But we've got the graphic here up on the screen. And let's talk about some of the weaknesses and something that I noticed during the game as well. Our defending down the flanks was horrendous. Let's talk about those 2 fullbacks. let's talk about Alex Telles, Rob, because absolutely awful. Awful. He has been for weeks now. Has zero sort of awareness of anything in his, at his near post. He's got no awareness in terms of when to stick, when to go. He bunches up close to the centre back. He's just poor. Dalot, to be honest, Dalot was United's best player from the Who Scored graphic. Again, he has some good qualities. He's a good progressive carrier and passer. Poor at finishing, but so bad defending in the flanks. And Brian exposed that. And I think the wide players as well were an issue in terms of tracking back. But United as a team don't defend as a team. We've got to defend from the front. The centre forward, the 2 wide players, that first wave press has to be, sort of not disjointed, has to be, working together. And unfortunately, once you can break through United's first wave of press or non-existent press, you go right at the midfielders, right at the centre backs. And look, there was that one period where I thought United were going to lose 7. Brighton were cutting through us like a hot knife through butter. And, as a manager, what can you do? Because, Ralph's not setting them out to not be compact, to not press as a team, to not counter press. They just don't listen. And look, Ten Hag is going to have the same issues coming in if these guys don't do what they're going to do.
He is, and this is why it's such a massive job for him. It's a super massive job for him. But the good thing is, of course, is that with this big sea change, he can come in from day one and make certain demands that Ralph Rangnick could never make. So that's the big difference between an interim and the guy you've given a long-term contract to and who's now got the responsibility of the project. Now, up on the screen here, we've got strengths and weaknesses, and this really does reflect the season more than anything. I'm not overly bothered about the strengths because the strengths are not getting you anywhere. Like players scoring goals or players doing their jobs or players not doing their jobs. It's a balance of all of it. And that's why you are where you are. So looking at the weaknesses here, and you just said they're talking about the flanks and talking about the fullbacks. Top weakness here, defending against attacks down the wing. Yes, we know that. Defending against long shots. Yes. Defending against skillful players. That just sucks, doesn't it? Protecting a lead. Yes. Stopping opponents from creating chances. Yeah, these are all really, really important stuff. Do you know what I mean? Avoiding fouling in dangerous areas. Yes. And then the last one, very weak, the weakest part of the whole of Manchester United, according to Who Scores metrics, avoiding offside. And the reason why that's a problem, Haider, is because you don't run. You get caught offside. So offside trap just catches you. You don't run. Don't run enough. So when you look at all of those things, if I'm Erik ten Hag and I'm just looking at those kind of 7 key areas of weaknesses, that kind of tells me I've got to change the whole team from top to bottom. It doesn't matter who's scoring goals, who's not scoring goals. It shows the whole team is rotten from the centre forward position to the centre back position to the wide areas to your midfield. Every area of Manchester United needs deconstructing and rebuilding.
And the question is, will he be allowed to do that, Rob? Will Ten Hag be given the power to do that? And that's really what he has to be able to do. He has to be able to ship out. And I think there will be a big exodus this summer. The likes of Jesse Lingard, who I am very, very much not a fan of. You might see Paul Pogba go as well. We'll talk about some of these players a little bit later on. There'll be a mass exodus of players that have been there for quite a significant amount of time. And then that's where you need to supplement it with some of the youth. I mean, let's actually talk about Hannibal for a second, because obviously we've seen reports that Rennick was very upset at how, and I thought it was, to be honest, BS, if I'm honest with you, how he was very upset at how he'd come onto the pitch. And to be honest with you, he's the only player that came on against Liverpool, or even was on that pitch, who kicked them about a bit and showed a little bit about him and showed a bit of fire, a bit of passion, a bit of desire, playing for that badge on his chest. Not one of those players currently. Those senior players on the pitch were doing that. But he's obviously now out of the fold. Like, what is the situation there? Is it true that Rennick was upset at how he was going in and being a bit gung-ho? Because I think it's BS, to be honest with you. But he hasn't been on the bench for the last couple of games.
He's not out of the fold at all. It's just that Rennick has been quite clear about this, about the young players and the reasons why he doesn't want to play the young players at the moment, and kind of saying things are wrong. It's up to the senior players to solve a lot of this, and young players need to come into a kind of much more whole setup. And I think with Hannibal, like you said there, he wasn't punished at all. Like, Ranick's comments after the game were really complimentary of Hannibal. And he was like, he came on, he tried his best, and he fought for the team. And that's what I asked him to do. So it's all rubbish, really. And the whole point of it is that you've seen Garnacho on the bench in these last few games. And you can see that Ralph doesn't want to use him because there's a spoiling effect happening at Manchester United. And there's a little bit of protection there. He's playing senior players who are all doing their long goodbyes to the crowd. So I think you're, again, caught between a rock and a hard place. I want to see the kids played, but I totally understand why Ralph's looking at this and going, no, this is down to the senior players. I need my senior players to actually do the work and get us through and get us over the line in these matches. And of course, that's not working either.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Rob, let's sort of move on to player attitude. And I think what's a good barometer of player attitude is, look, I'm not saying always if you see a player running around and doing the sort of hard yards, that's a good yardstick for player attitude. But I think it's important to take into consideration. So what we have here on the screen is a graphic that was released over the last week regarding Man United's running statistics. So you've got, the players at the top are the ones that run the most kilometers per 90 minutes. And you can also see the overall total in the middle column. And then the ones at the bottom, obviously, are the ones that run the least. So unsurprisingly, to be honest, Rob, Edinson Cavani is actually a representation of the issues at Manchester United, isn't he? Last season you consistently said this, actually, and I'll give you credit for this. You consistently said you can't build a team around Edinson Cavani. He's not going to be there long term, despite the fact that he was probably the one striker, the one traditional number 9 that gave United the qualities and he was a profile that United actually needed to win games. And that's why United were going after someone like Haaland, but played on the last man. He was great in terms of his pressing off the ball, good finisher, holding the ball up well as well. Obviously he's someone that's just decided that he doesn't want to play this season. We talk about injuries. He's probably going to go to Europe, isn't he? He's probably going to, I saw he was linked to clubs in La Liga. Yeah. Awful attitude. And he said recently that when Cristiano Ronaldo was announced as Man United signing, he told his agent, find me another club, I want to leave. That's the part of the problem. He decides when he wants to play. And I just think that's such a bad, from a senior player, such a bad sort of attitude and example to set. But it's rife throughout the squad. Then you've got Scott McTominay, no surprises up there. Jadon Sancho, Bruno Fernandes, again, no surprises there. Matic is quite surprising, but he has played limited minutes as well when you compare him to the rest of the players. Dan James, Fred. But look, also down at the bottom. So Maguire, centre backs. I'm not surprised you're not expecting centre backs to run around. Ronaldo. Which is something that we've been saying, per game, he's over 2.5 kilometers. He's running less than Edinson Cavani, which is a huge amount per 90 in footballing terms. Huge amount. And again, look, I'm not going to put too much sort of criticism on him on that. Just because of the fact he's 37 years old. So when you're having a look at this and you see how low down Martial is, for example, when he's played, again, small sample size. Mason, when he was playing as well. Rashford, 10.1 compared to the other top ones there. That is an example of the problem at Manchester United. People don't want to talk about it, but what you do off the ball, the work you do off the ball, is a big, big problem.
Yeah, I saw someone right at the start of the comments said earlier on, you're a stat show, because they want us to talk about stats. So here's the bit that really matters, because the whole point of it is that Manchester United, we can say to a blue in the face, you don't run enough. But then we have to look at the stats about what that means. It can't always just be about the eye test. It has to be about the players and what they're individually doing, and then putting it as a collective. So, you kind of went through some of it there. Just to kind of clarify one thing before we move on with it, is that Edinson Cavani, what he did say, and I want to kind of get his comments correct, he said he signed the contract with Man United. He was convinced to stay by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He had no idea that Ronaldo was coming to the club, and then Ronaldo came to the club. And he said, if I'd known Ronaldo was coming, I would have left, because he knew he wasn't going to play. He knew he wasn't going to be the number one striker. He knew he wasn't going to be the veteran, because that was Ronaldo's job. So if I'm Cavani, he's just telling the truth. It's not bad attitude. He's just saying, I got told one thing and it was another. Now that's on the Glazers. That's on the management. So we just kind of move on here to looking at the player stats. So yeah, Edinson Cavani does the most running. Just on the stats here, obviously there you've got minutes, kilometres, and then kilometres per 90. The one I'm interested in is the far right column, the kilometres per 90, because this is their average. Just to explain some of this, defenders generally run about 9 to 10 kilometres. Midfielders run the most, obviously. They will run somewhere around 11 kilometres if they're doing their job. Forwards, a bit like centre-backs, will run less because they're running channels. But you want them to be running at least 10K, Haider. If they're not running 10K, they're doing a lot of standing still. So let's use that as a principle now for this. Cavani's been injured all year. Let's move him to one side. Scott McTominay, no one likes him. He's not good enough. He doesn't have enough skill. These things are all true, but he runs. He does his work. Jadon Sancho, who people think is a baller and doesn't do the work, because he's a skillful player, on average has run 11 kilometers, 11.2 overall per game. That is elite. That's really, really good. No issue with Bruno Fernandes. And then Nemanja Matic, who people think don't run because he's a defensive midfielder, runs 11K a match. Go down the list. Marcus Rashford, 10.1. Wan-Bissaka, who again we think is a runner, don't we? A physical player, only runs 10. Luke Shaw runs 9.8. He really needs to be running more. Paul Pogba is running 10 in his kind of methodical way that he plays. I think that is acceptable. Go down the list. Mason Greenwood's obviously not been at the club for a while now, but again, not really elite running. 9.7. Anthony Martial, 9.7. Varane, Lindelof, Maguire, all around the lower nines. Cristiano Ronaldo, 9.3. Your centre forwards are not doing the work. That's what it tells you.
Rob, I'd like to see Jota's stats compared.
Okay, I'll give you one stat to add in here. Bernardo Silva, in a game very recently, ran 13.7 kilometres in a game for Man City. He's the smallest player on the pitch. He's working the hardest. Hard work means you get somewhere to winning matches. Take the hard work away, abdicate that hard work, and you see stats like this. So these stats tell everything, Haider. So when someone says to you, Man United don't run, but you feel your favourite player does, forget whether you believe it or not. Just look at the stats. And the stats are telling you there that Dan James has worked harder per game than maybe 15 players who are still at the football club, and he's gone. So you have to look at this in terms of your quality and what you do. I don't think Cristiano Ronaldo running 9.3 kilometres per game is acceptable. That's got nothing to do with Cristiano as a player or the goals or who he is. But as a centre forward, you need to run like Cavani runs. You just need it. If you don't have that running in your team naturally, you're going to lose games. And that's what we saw at Brighton, Haider, is that the front line does not run. It doesn't run because it's all about Harlem Globetrotter, absolute BS style of football. Skills, touches, all of those things. But they don't do that very well either, Haider. They're not an elite, skillful team. But they think they are up here. First thing Ten Hag needs to do on day one is get this lot running. And if they start to run, you've got a tiny chance.
Well, look, I did that Yuri, Timber, Anthony, and Ten Hag podcast tonight with James Rowe, the Dutch football journalist. So, guys, make sure you do check that out. Fantastic insight from James. James has lived in the Netherlands for 16 years. He's originally from London, but he's a Dutch journalist over there. He's got fantastic insight into, he's interviewed so many football players, and he's got a great insight into Ajax. And what was interesting when we had that chat, I mean, look, I'm just going to break down some of Ten Hag's stats. And you have to put them into context, obviously, Eredivisie, etc. But the biggest one for me was that while they averaged 3 goals per game scoring, they only conceded 0.85. And he said the biggest emphasis was obviously shape, but he said that front three works so hard. Whether that's Haller, whether that's Tadic, whether that's Anthony, these players work so hard, and it all starts from the front. So ultimately, at the end of the day, and I'm not surprised to see Jadon Sancho up there, by the way, because he played at Dortmund. He played in the pressing system. He knows, and he works very hard. I'm not surprised at all. The one I'm disappointed in, I'm not surprised to see Ronaldo so low. The one I'm so disappointed in, and it reflects, Rob, when you watch him play, is Marcus Rashford, 10.1. Something that you could always say about Marcus Rashford, in seasons gone by, was that he worked hard, didn't he? That he did the work off the ball. The amount of times, head down, walking around, there's obviously something bigger going on there. But if Ten Hag can't sort that issue out, and to be honest with you, Rob, I mean, there's no Elanga on here, which is interesting, or maybe I'm missing him. No, there is no Elanga on here. I think Elanga's stats would be pretty high.
This is going back weeks ago. I think kind of the window is probably for the first kind of 6 months of the season or something like that, because Dan James is obviously on there.
Yeah, cool. So when I look at this as well, that's actually the first area, because you can see here the midfield they're actually doing the work, aren't they? The midfield are actually doing the, maybe we want them to maybe a K more, 1 kilometer more or whatever, but they're doing the work. But it all starts from the front, and you can't have one player pressing and the other two not pressing. Look, it's just so easy to bypass through, and that's what we saw the other day. Though it's so easy where Brighton just went straight through. Liverpool did this. Everyone's done the same thing this season. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we can talk about goals, and we'll look actually at the goal breakdown of the players in a second. You can talk about all these goals, but the players' attitude to what they have to do off the ball is atrocious. The two best and most hardworking sides in the Premier League and probably in Europe, the two best sides are Liverpool and Manchester City, unfortunately. They're the most hardworking side. They're the ones with the least ego in terms of, right, that's my role, I've got to do it. And if they don't do it, Rob, Pep will take them off. Klopp will take them off. Liverpool have got players where, you're seeing Salah get rested and Luis Diaz, unbelievable player. And again, we'll talk about him a little bit later because Rennick's comments were interesting the other day. These players are so hard working. You supplement that with talent, with, footballing IQ as well to understand their roles. I don't think there's a lot of footballing IQ in this squad, if I'm honest with you. Because if there was, Rennick wouldn't have had to abandon the gegenpressing 4-2-2-2 that early on in his reign.
I disagree with that. I think there's plenty of football IQ and football experience in this squad, Haider, but there is a massive disconnect with the work that you need to do to be successful. It's kind of as basic as that. If you don't run around as much as the other team, I will put my money on the other team beating you. So you just said about Brighton walking through. There's one game that really sticks out to me, and it was a game that Man United won, and it was in Champions League against Villarreal. Yeah, and Villarreal were getting the ball at centre-back at Pau Torres, and they were going from centre-back to centre-forward in 2 passes and just walking through the space. And we watched that game. Now, Man United won that game because Ronaldo scored, obviously, the goal right at the end of the match, and you're happy you've won the game. Fantastic. But is it a surprise that Villarreal got to a Champions League semi-final and you got nothing out of the season? It's no surprise. It's because Villarreal run around more. Villarreal don't have any more football acumen than you. They've got a guy in their team who was playing for Bournemouth 10 minutes ago, doing it. So you're not any worse than these teams, Haider. You're just not doing the work at the right times. And that's why, like you highlighted Marcus there. As I said, in terms of what you want forwards to do, 10 to 11 is kind of okay. I think if you're in that bracket, you're kind of doing it. But those fine margins of being maybe in the 9s tell you that you have too many players that don't quite cut it. Because those extra few yards is the difference, Haider, with closing down a shot and standing off a shot. Victor Lindelof yesterday, I don't ever want to see him play for Man United. This is me now, not as a football journalist. I'm sick of someone who stands there with his arms behind his back and goes, I'm doing my job. It's not doing your job. Close the player down. Do your job. Work harder. Don't just stand there, because we see that a lot. He does that, but other players do it. It's not just him. But you can see goals because of it. These metrics here show that Man United as a football team do not cut it. And you are going to be in the Europa Conference League because you deserve it.
Rob, I'm going to bring up a comment because I've had Vincent consistently say, I think this is, sorry, Vincent, I'm going to bring up a comment. I'm going to give my opinion on your comments on this because seem to be putting everything on Ralph's plate, and you think that we don't put anything on Ralph's plate. And your comment is, it's extraordinary how you've given Ralph a sainthood. And this is a problem with Twitter. If you say one thing, then it's a sweeping statement in that direction. We've said on the show, and we're saying it today, Ralph isn't blameless. But the stats are showing right here that when key players in your starting 11, and it's not about individuals, it's about the collective, aren't doing their work to a certain level, then you can't function as a unit. We saw this at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Rob. People have got very short memories. We got beat 4-1 by Watford. We got destroyed by Liverpool at home 5-0. City destroyed us as well. Completely played us off the park. The same issues that we see on the Ollie are now filtering in with Ralph. The problem is, and maybe we thought that Ralph would be able to get more out of it, and he hasn't, in my opinion. There's very few players I think that have actually improved under him. And it's been a bit of a poor experiment. We're not absolving Ralph from some of the things that we're seeing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the numbers here show on the screen that there are players not doing what they have to do. And as a manager, and anyone that's played football or coached a team, if 5 or 6 or 7-year-old team aren't doing what they can do, you're going to get beat, and you're going to get beat convincingly. And that's what it's showing. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm happy Rennick's come in because he's exposed, ripped the plaster off, ripped the Band-Aid off. Everyone now can see the issues, and some people that can't. And if you're blaming Rennick for this, and because you wanted Carrick as an interim because he would have been better, then you're not looking at the bigger picture. This is not about this season. This is about what's going to go on beyond. And I don't know if Erik ten Hag would have got the job. I'm not saying Rennick had all the influence, but would have got the job. If let's say Murto hadn't had a bit more influence, and that there's going to be a push towards a footballing structure. And with that footballing structure, we'll see Ralph as a consultant. I don't know if he's going to say, if I'm honest with you, but there's a much bigger picture to this than what's been going on the last 6 months on the pitch.
Absolutely. And the thing is, do we seriously believe there, Vincent, that Ralph Rangnick has not been telling this bunch to run more? Do we seriously believe that Ralph Rangnick, who for 30 years has been the godfather of a certain style of football, with that style of football now dominating world football, that he's telling this lot, don't run? It's ridiculous. When Ole came to the football club, the first thing Ole said was that this team doesn't run enough. It's the first thing he said on day one. And it's still true today. Now, why did those things change at that time and not change now? Well, we had Jose Mourinho who played a lower block. Yeah, so players are not going to run in a lower block. It's about keeping the position. So you don't press, you don't go high up the pitch. You expect to see lower running stats. And Ole came in on day one and said, this lot need to run. And do you know what they did, Haider? They ran, and for 20 games, they smashed every opponent in front of them. And they were like, light bulb. Ole got the job. They all clocked off. United came fifth. Ole found a way over 2-3 years to maybe have more rudimentary tactics, but winning football. So last year, Man United, unbeaten away from home for a year. Now they're on a run of 5 away games without winning a match or being defeated. It's ridiculous. It's the same players effectively, bar the transfer window. What's changed? The only thing that's really changed is Ole. Ole has gone. This is Ole's squad. And Ole's squad are going, I've clocked off because I'm not interested in this anymore. It's not. That's why I'm saying it's not Ralph's fault. No one's giving Ralph a knighthood or kind of sainthood, as he called it there, because Ralph Rangnick will go away from this, and I'm sure he'll do really well with Austria. I think he'll go there, average players that will work for him. He'll turn Austria from an average team into a better team. At Man United, he had better players, and you could say and lay it at his door that he hasn't got them to do the work. But whose fault is that? Footballers should not be spoon-fed, Haider. Yeah? You can't be. You've got to go out there and be a man and show what you can do. Get on with the job. This lot don't do it as a collective and individually. And it's a problem positionally. If your attack does not close down a defense, do you know what? You're going to get smashed. You're going to lose games 3 and 4-0 because it starts at the centre-back walking through your attack. And that happens at Man United every single week. Telling me Ralph Rangnick stood there saying, yeah, don't press, don't close down. No, this is a rebellion.
It's just nonsense, yeah.
It's a rebellion from a bunch of players who should know better. And hopefully it will cost quite a few of them their jobs next season when a coach who comes in who's now the full-time manager will be able to say, well, you let the team down. You let the team down. I don't like your running metrics. I don't like your work rate. Get out of my football club. Because you know what? there's an 18 or a 19 or a 20-year-old that will take your place and do it, and the fans will love them, and I will love them, and at least you'll get some hard work out of the team.
Yeah, and Vince has come back and said, Rennick can talk, we can't walk. Klopp took 3 seasons to play his style. You've basically snookered yourself, mate, because you're saying it's taken Klopp
That's
3
right.
seasons. Rennick's been there for 6 months. So
That's
you're,
right.
you're backing up our point here. Ultimately, at the end of the day, without a preseason, you can't do it. But what I will say as well is, if I'm seeing this sort of attitude towards Rennick, I'm just going to say it, Rob, I don't think that anyone's going to have any patience. A lot of fans will have patience for Erik ten Hag, who's going to take a much longer time. He's got to completely change the whole makeup of the squad and the style of play. This squad can't hold on to the ball for more than 3 or 4 passes. Nope. Erik ten Hag's, principles center around possession, keeping the ball, movement, verticality. These are all things which are going to take time. So we could be 6 months into next season. We're sitting Christmas. United is sitting 7th or 8th. That's the reality of it. But we've got to have time and patience on this. Yeah, we don't know. And this is the thing. And I just, it's a problem with the fan base. It's just instant gratification, instant success. And unfortunately, I think that there's going to be a lot more lows with Ten Hag before we start to see what we want to see. But look, for me, he's got 2 or 3 years of a grace period before we go. But look, Rob, let's move on now to the goal stats at Manchester United with this squad. So unsurprisingly, you see Cristiano Ronaldo at the top. And this is Premier League, isn't it?
Yeah, just Premier League.
Here. Just Premier League. So Cristiano Ronaldo, 18 goals, 3 assists. Far and away United's top scorer this season. And then Bruno Fernandes, who's had a poor season for me with 10 goals, 6 assists. But I think it's quite stark when you look down at the list here on the screen. Mason, who has not played for God knows how long, 3-4 months, 5 goals, 1 assist. Fred's actually been probably, in my opinion, the one player that's improved under Rennick, Rob. I actually like seeing Fred a bit further forward, and I think he will have a key part to play in Ten Hag's squad. 4 goals, 4 assists. Rashford, 4 and 2. Jadon Sancho, obviously, we haven't seen the best of him yet. There's been issues there. But we did say, Rob, when we did a Sancho podcast as well, we did say before he joined that it could take a season like it did at Dortmund for him to settle. And to come from such a defined system. And you're almost seeing a Donny van der Beek-ish sort of scenario with Jadon, where when you come from such a defined and well-drilled system, and then you come to absolute anarchy here, which is what you see in Man United, where the system's a mess, it's broken. It's very difficult for a player then to show his best form. But I have a lot of faith, because I think that under someone like Ten Hag, I think Jadon Sancho could absolutely explode, provided that everyone else in the system's doing their job. And then you got Langer with a couple of goals, a couple of assists. Cavani's hardly played, but 2 goals, 1 assist. Jesse's got a couple. You go all the way down there. Pogba's got 9 assists. It's funny to say that Pogba, how many did he have in his first 4 games? Was it 6 or 7 assists? Yeah. Something crazy like that. But, he's a problem apparently. And he's the issue in Man United. And then obviously you've got McTominay down there. So when you have a look at this, the biggest issue is the fact that the front 3 have not scored enough goals. Ronaldo scored quite a few goals. Bruno's had a much more of a poor season. But Mason, Rashford and Sancho, you expect more goals from them. And you look at Liverpool's wide players, the goals are spread across that front 3. Same with City as well. Sterling, Mahrez have all contributed. Jesus is now coming again, Foden. And this is a point, and this is why I think we're stepping away from, and you look around Europe and maybe the lack of a 20-plus goal a season striker, and you're seeing that, I think, barring Haaland and maybe a couple more strikers. But you're looking at Osimhen, you're looking at Lautaro Martinez, who's more of a second striker. You're looking at, who are United linked to? Darwin Núñez as well. I know they've scored quite a few goals, but they're definitely a step away in spreading the goals around the team, because the system is king, isn't it? The front 3 aren't just wingers anymore. The 2 wide players, they're inside forwards essentially. And you've seen that with Liverpool's front 3. And I think that's been another problem for Man United. While we've been conceding goals, everything has gone through Ronaldo and to a lesser extent Bruno to come up with the goals. And when they don't score or they don't perform, United don't win football matches.
And United invariably lose. I think that's the kind of way of looking at it. I think the thing is, and we've said this definitely before, the day of the classical number 9 has come and gone. Yeah, the classical number 9 used to be the one player on the pitch that didn't really have to run. All they had to do was pick the lock. So it's the old fox in the box syndrome. So if you could be in the box at the right time and tap the ball in, you did your job. And the rest of it was for the other kind of 9 outfield players to go and do the role. As you highlighted there, City and Liverpool, and I think this is really pertinent, is that modern football has moved on to an extent where you now share the goals out between 6 and 7 players rather than just having 1 or 2, rather than just having that primary striker. What have Man United done in the last 12 months? They've gone back in time. They've gone back in time to, like, when I say back in time, I'm talking 15, 20 years. So they've gone to having a classical number 9 that just scores goals and doesn't do a lot more of the work, and having an attack that's now very brittle and very out of sync. So let's look at these numbers very quickly and think about last season and apply the science. Ronaldo, yes, scored lots of goals. Great. Well done, Cristiano. It's your job. He knows what he wants to do. It's why he turns up. Bruno Fernandes hasn't been anywhere nearly as effective. But when you go down the list and look at Greenwood, Rashford, put Sancho in there, put Elanga in there, put Cavani in there, you can even then add in Martial, who's not at the club. You could stick in even a Jesse Lingard, who can score goals at his very, at the apex of his form. When you look at that and compare it to last year under Ole, United was spreading the goals out last year. You had several players that could go win you a game, and you didn't have one real primary centre forward. Cavani was doing the work as the 9, but he was on and off the bench, wasn't he, Haider? Like, the whole team wasn't built around him. He was just doing that bit that Ole said the others weren't doing, which was that kind of pushing up on the last defender. This year, you've done none of that. Those players who were learning that system last year under Ole haven't been able to replicate it because the team has been about Cristiano. So this is why I don't blame Cristiano, but his style of number 9 play is dying and is effectively dead. That's why Man United are going to come in the Europa League places or the conference places while Ronaldo gets you 20 goals. We said it at the start of the season. Ronaldo will always score goals. That's not the problem. The problem is what your attack does. And this attack is not cohesive. It doesn't work together. It doesn't look after each other. They don't set traps. They don't work hard. They don't push a last defender. You just mentioned Lautaro. Yeah, perfect example at Inter Milan. Scores goals, but my God, does he work? Yeah, you talked about Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez plays left, right, in the hole, 10 and 9. Modern centre-forward play. But yeah, give him the ball on the penalty spot. You hit the target, score your goal. This is what you need to be. And this is what Ten Hag will do, I'm almost sure, from day one, is that he will bring in a striker very early on that will give him that. I don't think he's going to bin Ronaldo. I think Ronaldo will do his time and stay for another year. But I think that we will see Ronaldo sat on the bench a lot more next season. Looking at those stats there, started 27 games, 3 off the bench. That's horrendous for a 37-year-old. Yeah, coming on 38. He needs to start maybe 18 games and come off the bench 10 times. Then you look after him. But United have not been able to do that because they changed the whole jigsaw puzzle, Haider, at the start of the season. They went from being a cohesive attack, coming second in the league and coming runners up in Europa League, to now becoming a pile of junk and garbage because you want one guy to score you all the goals. And it's hurt Bruno more than anyone. Bruno can't link with Ronaldo. Bruno looks like a lesser player. You see that. Last year, Bruno was the best attacking midfielder in the world. Yeah, he was up there with the real top, the City players that do it and the players that were at Liverpool. And we were saying he's the only one that gets in their team, weren't we? We were saying for City. Would he get in the team this year? Would he get on their bench? No. He'd be nowhere near those championship winning teams.
It's a really good point. Something I do also want to say about, these goals as well being spread out is that I think... And there's a good point here, actually, as well. We had a lot of penalties last season. Obviously, Bruno was scoring them as well. How many times have United's wide men got into the box, attacked their man, drawn a foul? I actually can't think. I can think about... I honestly can think about three or four penalties this season. Obviously, Ronaldo scored a few. Bruno missed against Arsenal as well. So this is the thing as well, is that what United were doing really well under Ole, for a certain period of time, was those wide players were getting into the box. They were dangerous. They were drawing fouls. United, I think, had the most penalties last season. So that's something I do want to see more with Ten Hag. Obviously, under him, the wide players will be wide players. They will be expected to hold the width. So it's going to be a completely different sort of role and game for these players. And I'm just wondering, how many, when you're looking at these wide players in Man United, can actually do that for Ten Hag? I think Sancho can do it. Maybe Elanga. But again, I think Elanga's still very young. I think coming off the bench or maybe even a loan, Rob, to improve some of his decision making. But you're seeing with Elanga as well. Let's touch on him for a second because he's someone who was, he's really sort of shone under Rennick in terms of his attitude. He's been fantastic. Off the ball, has been very, very good as well. Scored a couple of good goals. The one against Atletico really stands out. The one against Leeds as well. But you're seeing him sort of do not do the things that he was doing when he first came in. And I think that's a little bit of the worry. And I think that is why the younger players haven't played. I still would have liked to have seen some more of these younger lads play. I would have loved to have seen Alvaro Fernandez play instead of Telles yesterday, but it is what it is. Maybe the last game of season, Rennick will just chuck the kids out there. But I think that's the concern, isn't it? That there's players there that are just regressing and not doing what they're doing before. And this environment these players are in is very, very toxic. And, ultimately, I think when you look at a title-winning squad and you look at some of Sir Alex's best squads, you had a captain, obviously, but it wasn't just one player. It was 5 or 6 players who are running that dressing room. Where are those players for Man United right now? Where are those leaders? I don't see any.
No, you're absolutely right to highlight that, because I was thinking that before the game yesterday and also afterwards, is that we have faux leadership at Manchester United. The leadership group at United is quite small. And let's highlight them quickly. It's Cristiano, it's Bruno, it's Marcus Rashford, because I think you still have to include Marcus in that, and it's Harry Maguire. That's the 4 that really lead it. I don't include Paul Pogba in there, because Paul Pogba is not a kind of outward leader. He's a guy that is popular in the dressing room, that does his work, but he's not the guy that maybe takes you on the next level. You could probably put Varane in there as well, but you can see as well with Varane that he's not right. So you look at that leadership group, Haider, and there's not one of them that I felt would have, at half-time yesterday, absolutely lost the plot in the dressing room and gone, what are you lot doing? We're going to drag you along. I think there would have been a lot of sitting down, sitting still, listening to Ralph, getting up and going out and doing my job again, but not actually doing it very well. So I put a lot of that on the experienced players. And this is another thing about Cristiano. The player I was comparing it to in my head, post-match yesterday and then this morning, was Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So you sign Zlatan, and you know that if you don't do the work around Zlatan's going to punch you in the face. Yeah, it's as simple as that. Zlatan's going to go in the dressing room and kick your chin. That's what he's going to do. And he's going to say to you, yeah, I might not be running around, but I do all of this and I score goals and I'm the leader and you better listen to me. Now, we know Cristiano doesn't do that. So I'm not knocking Cristiano for not being like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but that's the experience head you need. Someone who goes, I just do not tolerate this. And I think you see it with Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes yesterday in his interview saying, oh yeah, I agree. I'm not fit to wear the shirt. What are you talking about?
Rob, I think what he was doing, to be honest with you, in some ways I kind of appreciated it, because it was honesty. It wasn't excuses. And I think that's what you can give Bruno that, I think. Bruno will turn around and say, you know what? We were rubbish today. No excuses. I actually respected that rather than trying to make excuses.
Yeah, but Haider, is he affecting it on the field of play? And is he affecting it behind the scenes? So if he's not, I would rather you just kept your gob shut and sorted it out with your players. So you come out, and this again, it's like I called it faux leadership, and I'll also call it faux honesty. Because to do a tweet or to do a text or to do an Instagram post or to do an interview and say, yeah, I was awful, we don't care. Go and fix it. Are you going to do it again against Crystal Palace in the next game? Probably. Now, that's a problem, isn't it? That's the issue. And if I'm Eric Ten Hag and I'm watching that, I'm looking at this and looking at this leadership group, and I'm thinking, well, you're not doing the job. I'm going to go get some new leaders. Yeah. So this is the thing again about shirt sellers and who fans love and superstars and icons and all of this stuff. It means nothing if the team is brittle and doesn't have proper leadership. And I put that squarely on those 4 or 5 players who should know better and should be doing better and dragging people along. But they don't drag people along. They're miserable. They moan. They gesture. They walk around. They constantly, they even go and clap the fans, some of them. Yeah, after they've travelled all the way to Brighton on the south coast. It isn't good enough, is it? It's not good enough. And we need to see that change in the next 2 months, Haider. You need to change that immediately, because I think that's a big part of winning and losing.
Absolutely. Guys, we're going to talk now about Ralph Rennick and an assessment of his time. And we'll do a season review properly, but we'll just talk about one section, I think, which is quite important, because some of his comments this week regarding the transfer window. So I'm going to read them out, Rob, now. And so Rennick, when he was asked, on United signing a striker, he said the answer at this time was no. There's no player on the market that can help us. There were a few: Luis Diaz, who's now at Liverpool; Julian Alvarez, who we've spoken about consistently. Rob, there's also a young lad called Moises Caicedo, who United should have got last summer. It's a very funny story. I was telling you off air. Obviously, you guys know we did a show with Simon Edwards. gave a fantastic insight, and he he did message me, and he also retweeted the tweet saying, "Told United fans, this is the guy that you should have got." Ran the game. He overshadowed Basuma, someone that United fans and
£5 million quid.
Yeah, 5 million quid.
£5 million.
Julian Alvarez is about 13 to 15 million as well, and he'll go
cheaper than Bebe. When we signed Bebe, he was more than £5 million quid.
Crazy, absolutely crazy. And then so obviously Alvarez will be at City, and Vlahovic, who at the time was still with Fiorentina. To be fair, Vlahovic did want Juve, although it doesn't seem to be working out particularly well over there with the dinosaur Allegri. Rennick also said, "I spoke to United board and told them, shouldn't we at least speak and analyse and find if we can get a player on loan or permanent deal?" But the answer was no, and that was it. Maybe they didn't want to do any winter business. It doesn't matter. The answer was no. And Rob, this was your comments. I'm going to read out what you tweeted about it. A really damning quote by Rennick about the United board. "When fans think about what is to blame for this atrocious season, you know where to look. The campaign collapsed because United lost firepower. The board didn't recognise this despite being told it's malpractice." But look, some people want to put all the blame on Rennick. Some people want to put all the blame on Oli. Whatever it is, I don't want to go into that. That is so damning that they didn't even have a discussion regarding it. They could have had a discussion and said, look, there's this player, this player, these are the pros and cons. Didn't even do that. And ultimately, at the end of the day, why have United struggled? They went from Mason Greenwood, Cristiano Ronaldo, Edinson Cavani, Anthony Martial as your four strikers to just Ronaldo in the space of 6 months. The lad is 37 years old. The absolute negligence of this and the way that the club is run. They wrote off this season. They didn't have to write off the season. They wrote off the season because they kept Oli in the job too long. They wrote off the season because they didn't go and get Conte, in my opinion. And you're seeing what he did at Liverpool yesterday. And you still have Gary Neville today saying he wanted Simeone but didn't want Conte because Simeone plays 4-4-2, but Conte plays a wing backs. It's just, this is what he tweeted today, just before we started the show. And so United wrote off another season, and then now they're behind because they've missed out on people like Alvarez. They haven't gone and bought players. Liverpool got Diaz, and they're probably going to win the Champions League now, or they're in the final, and they're probably not going to win the title. But they push that deal forward because they're in the summer.
Someone will clip it up. Don't say that.
What? That they're probably going to win the Champions League? They're probably not going to win the Champions League.
No, the other way. You said they won't win the title.
Oh, geez, yeah. Well,
they might win the title. Don't say it until it happens.
Yeah, they might win the title. But either way, look, ultimately, at the end of the day, other teams have a plan. They think forward. They go and they get the players they need to do. They back the manager. And you can say what you want. I think ultimately on the pitch with Rennick has been a bit of a disaster. I know someone's saying here, we appointed Ten Hag. That's absolutely fine. We've appointed Ten Hag. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the discussion could have been had between Rennick, the board, and Ten Hag and say, there's this striker that we like called Darwin Núñez. Would you like him, Ten Hag? Oh, yeah, we would like him. And you can still bring in a player, or at least put some steps in place to try and salvage the season, because it wasn't over in January, unfortunately.
There's absolutely no coincidence that Man United have binned their whole scouting network in the last few weeks, because they do look at that. The board, we know, have no football experience, so they outsource everything. So it's a bit like needing a brick wall built in your front garden. If you can't do it, you go and get a builder to come and do it, don't you? A bricklayer to come and fix your wall. This Man United setup and these owners and these directors don't know anything about kicking this spherical ball around a football pitch. So they go to people who they think do know, and then they use that to make decisions. Now, Ten Hag's coming to the football club, and yes, this is correct. This is their next move now, going, right, we're going to change again for the fourth time in ever many years. But the big difference this time is they are outsourcing it to a guy who's actually doing it at the moment. So Ten Hag is a current manager, a current coach, and is doing very well at Ajax. So fingers crossed for him that he can move on and maybe win his title and leave the Netherlands as a champion again. But what's really, really important with all of this is structure from the highest level. Liverpool win because they have that structure. City win because they have that structure. Brighton are doing well because they have that structure. Man United are awful because they don't have that structure. That's just what it is. It's just the bottom line. So this is why I don't blame Ralph completely in that term, because yes, you can moan about tactics, you can moan about 4-2-2-2 and switching to 4-3-3 and then being 4-4-2 against Brighton and people walking through your team. Yeah, you can talk about those things, but they're not actually interesting. What's interesting is what people authorize. So like you said at the start there, Haider, Man United, it was told to them that you need a forward. Now, if you don't get that you've lost Mason Greenwood to something that you cannot control, and you don't need to replace those 20 goals that he will score you this season, that is malpractice. That's why I called it malpractice, because you're looking at it and you're kind of going, we'll be all right. We'll just let it happen. You know, that brick wall will build itself in my front garden. It just will, because that's what happens. No, it won't build itself. So this is why I think with Rennick, you know, he's had to play Cristiano. He's got no choice. It's the only centre forward you've got going. Cavani's been on holiday all season long because he's been injured. Marcus's form has just been eviscerated. Anthony Martial lives in Spain now. He's not even at the football club. Like, it's crazy when you need more forwards and you kind of give them away.
I can't believe we let him go, to be honest, Rob. I know that he wanted to go. I just can't believe it.
It's a board decision. So he went because the board authorized it. The board wanted his money off the wage bill. So this is what it comes down to. Like, because that was always the big thing with Sevilla. It was like, can you pay it? Sevilla were like, no. Will you pay half? No. Eventually it got down to the deal they wanted. They let Anthony Martial go. But you could have done with Anthony Martial. Do you remember his last game?
He scored a goal, Rob.
He came on for the last 10 minutes, affected the game. You won the game. And I remember Ralph Rennick going up to him and giving him a huge hug and was like, thank you. 2 minutes later, he was out on loan. Yeah, it's thick, isn't it? It's thick. You can't be a board and think that that's clever. You can't operate like that. So this is where we're at this crossroads, Haider, for our show is a tactical show, but also for Manchester United. What comes next? Well, you've got to get rid of a load of players because they're not good enough. And you've got to get players in. And it's kind of as basic as that. Because if you want to get players that run, you better bring in players that have that profile. Man United have not done that at all. They've not profiled players to do specific jobs. They just go, you're quite good. Our scouting network likes you. Oh, what's that? Fred, 52 million quid. Bang. Oh, Pep wants you. You know, Alexis Sanchez.
Must be good, yeah.
Bang. You know, so this is how they operate. Cristiano's on the market. Oh, no, we can't have him at Man City. Bang. It's a crap way of running a football club. And it's got nothing to do with tactics and nothing to do with winning. So this is what we hope now that Richard Arnold is, and we're going to be hard on Richard Arnold. We're going to put it at his door. All the failures go back to the board. And if the club continues to fail, we will put it back on the lap of the board, because Murto's trying to do his job. I've got every faith that Ten Hag will try and do his best to get it right. Ten Hag will employ a load of people around him in his inner circle to try and be better, to get this team going somewhere. But it's now a case also, Haider, of chopping the squad up and moving out the bits that you feel affect you. I don't believe that the squad is toxic within the dressing room, but I do believe that in the dressing room, they don't give two you-know-whats about each other. I don't think they look at each other and go, it's the greatest player of all time sat there. Yeah, I better work hard for him today. I don't believe that at all. I think they look at him and they look at other players and the other senior players and the leaders, and there's a little bit of disdain there. It's a bit like, well, he doesn't work for me. Why should I work for him? United must solve that on day one of Ten Hag coming in. He needs to really do that root and branch and kind of do what Ralph's been saying. Ralph's told us, you're not aggressive enough. You don't work hard enough. You don't press. You lose the ball too much. You're not very good. All of those things, fix them.
But Rob, my question is, so quickly, just before Ranabir said here, so he's just add the right context of Ralph's comments. The board agreed with the initial assessment, but the scouting department said no one was available. They're all gone now. He sacked two. Sacked. So that's good. But what I do want to add to this as well is because there's a lot of people aren't happy with the way that Ralph's been in the media. And they said, look, he's just talking. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's what the club needed. So, you know, people complained because, in my opinion, I thought Ollie protected these lads too much. And that is a problem. They're mollycoddled. Ollie protected them. And that's just the way Ollie did things. Some people liked it, some people don't. Jose Mourinho is the other extreme. And by the way, Jose is looking like an absolute saint now, in my opinion. I think when he talks saying that, you know, when I finished second, it was the best achievement I ever had in my career. He's looking better and better as the days go along, in my opinion. And that's generally what I think. I know you might disagree with that, just because of the fact that he also exposed the problems. But ultimately, Jose Mourinho was all about Jose Mourinho. It was about him. In my opinion, with Rennick, like, you know, at the end of the day, people might not agree with this, but I think that he's doing what the fans want him to do. He's exposing those above. He's exposing the issues at the club that we all talk about. So I don't understand why people have a problem with it. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we're all saying the same things about these players. But when Rennick says it in the press, people have got a problem with it. So I just don't understand. If everyone says, oh, he's just an interim, Okay, fine. Well, he's just interim. So then he's allowed to go in and just say it how it is. So I don't understand why people are saying this. I don't understand.
Yeah, I think with Jose, I was at all those games and the tactics were rank. They were awful. If we were doing tactic shows on Jose Mourinho, we'd be doing 4-hour shows, Haider. They were awful. Low block, pile of tripe, killing his players when he needed to help his players. But yes, there's a stack of players from that era that are now still a problem, aren't they? So you could maybe apply some of that science. It's very easy when things are wrong to be able to look back and look at other things that were slightly better and then say, oh, that's where we should have been. I disagree with that. I think what you're saying there is kind of correct about Ralph, is that Ralph came in as an interim and he could only do so much. So I'm glad that he's now talking a little bit historically about the transfer market, what he wanted, what he identified, because it was stuff that we were all identifying. We were all saying you can't run a season with a 37-year-old up front. You can't do it. It's not real, because you're rather the old forward. If he's injured for the whole campaign, which he has been, you're going to lose matches. If you lose a player to injury or something that you cannot fathom, like Mason Greenwood, that's crushing. I think Ralph described it as a human disaster a couple of days ago. He said the Mason Greenwood case for the football club, for the player, for the staff, and for everyone involved was a human disaster. It's not just about goals, is it? Now, the club have carried that. The players have carried that. Someone that they work with being in that situation and putting himself in it. So those kind of things are very difficult to work with. And what you need to do, Haider, is go and sign someone. That's what you need to do. If you don't create enough, you sign someone who creates. If you don't work hard enough, don't run far enough, you go and get people that do those things. You can't expect players to do different things they're not good at. They've tried to do that. That's why Ralph changed it. So as far as I'm concerned, Ralph got to a point in the season, I think it was after those West Ham performances, he had a really good run where the XG for the 20 games that he ran was over 2. No, it was over 2 on average, and that's good. So it's like you're getting where you want to be. And the XG against goals was under 0.5. So you're going to win games 2-1 or 2-0 every game. If that's what the XG is telling you. And United were winning those games. And what happened? It fell off a cliff, literally. And that's why I put it on the players, because they're the only ones who could have changed everything, Haider. When United end this season and we go, thank God that's over, it's only really the players that could have done a little bit more. I don't blame Ole. He's come and gone. It's done. It's dusted. He got the sack for it. He paid for it. Rennick, he's come. He'll be gone soon. I don't blame him either. There's no magic tactics, Haider, to make people run more. It doesn't work. You need to have players who are committed to themselves and to each other.
Absolutely. And guys, we're going to finish off now and talk about the season as a whole. So where did it go wrong? How long have we got, Rob? I mean, look, we'll try and break this down in 5 to 7 minutes. But I think you can probably look at the summer transfer window last season, where I think if anyone told you that we got Cristiano Ronaldo, Rafael Varane, and Jadon Sancho, you'd be absolutely delighted.
Totally.
But what we were missing, and we've said this already many, many times, everyone knows this, we're missing a midfielder. That midfield wasn't upgraded, unfortunately. I do genuinely think if Oli had got a midfielder that he'd wanted, I think he probably would still be in the job. I really do think it would have made that much of a difference. We've said this many times. I've said before as well, it doesn't matter who this midfielder is. I really like Declan Rice. We talk about lack of leaderships. Declan Rice would walk into this Man United team, and then he would also, for me, I'd have him as captain. I tweeted that. I got laughed at. But ultimately, and people compared it to Harry Maguire, different characters. You can see they're different characters. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's where it went badly for Manchester United. And we go back to the first game of the season against Leeds. I mean, Leeds have been shocking this season, but what a great performance! Great Mason playing as number 9. Great rotational flexibility with the front three. Bruno Fernandes was making those third man runs, gets his hat trick. Paul Pogba playing further forward, doing what he does well. And you're thinking, you know what, Man United might do something here this season. Yeah, they could possibly challenge. And then from that game onwards, just got worse and worse and worse. Tactically, it was broken. I'm not going to blame Ronaldo solely because it's not a Ronaldo issue, but we went from a flexible, dynamic front three, which was rotating, and you saw Martial come to the left, Mason come centrally, Rashford got to the right. Went from that to fixated on the number 9, having to feed the number 9, and ultimately Ronaldo will score goals, but we don't have players that can feed him. We've seen that. The midfield was poor as well. Bruno Fernandes' form dropped off. And then Oli got sacked. United waited. Should have probably done it in the international break. Didn't do that. Should have got Conte. Didn't do that. Appointed Rennick. I was excited. You were excited as well. Showed glimpses at the beginning. United played some decent football. You saw little glimpses of the gegenpressing. You thought this would be brilliant. And Ralph said it himself yesterday in his interview. He said, up until the West Ham game, we were doing very, very well.
That's true.
Since Atletico out of the Champions League, lost the FA Cup game as well. Don't know how we lost that. We lost that as well. Yeah. Just gone like this. And Ralph said himself, the last 6 weeks or so have been shocking. Some of the worst football we've seen in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era. Obviously, we've got Erik ten Hag coming in now. I think the club have done well to secure a manager of his caliber. But this season was lost for me ultimately back in sort of October, November. The club didn't act with Ollie, unfortunately. They could have ridden it out. Should they have given it to Carrick? There is legitimate comments to say, maybe Carrick should have been given the job and just kept with Carrick, McKenna, etc. And then United should have gone to the end of the season, because Carrick did obviously have quite a good 2 or 3 games. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think if we're going to look at the problems of Manchester United, and we know the problems for the last 10 years, but for this season specifically, not securing that midfielder was huge for what we've seen currently this season.
Absolutely. I think we're at the end of the transfer window, we kind of called it an 8 or a 9. I think a lot of people saying it was a 9 out of 10. I think I called it an 8. And the reason was because, you got the right-sided forward that you wanted, who can play on the left. And he's a worldie. He's a young lad, but he's proved it at Dortmund. You got a World Cup winner at centre-back, again, who's proved it, maybe getting on a little bit, but could come in, can give you some class at centre-back. And let's be honest, I don't think he has actually at the moment. The jury is out on Rafael Varane long-term. And I think when you look at Cristiano, there's no doubt that he scores you lots of goals. But what was worrying, Haider, was everyone at Juventus were like, thank God he's gone, because he's ruined the team. So those things were like that, on the surface look good, underneath a little bit more worrying. Then you look at what you missed out on. And yes, you're right about the midfield, but I think it shows that you just need people who run in key positions and have got quality. And that's what United needed. Didn't need a defensive midfielder. You needed just a midfielder. You needed a Ruben Neves. You needed someone who could come in straight away and just hit the floor running, work with the team, getting it. You also needed a right back. You needed a right back to say to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, I'll properly challenge you. Yes, we had Delot, and Delot's not been the worst player in the team, but he's an issue. He cannot be your starter going forward. Luke Shaw's had lots of injuries this year. I think United would have been much more assured with Luke Shaw if you'd got a fit version of him. He's had 5 injuries this year. That's a problem. It's left you with Alex Telles. So you look at those positions and you could have gone and bought for midfield and your fullbacks on top of what you had, but that would have meant moving players on. Could you have done that? Yes. You could have sold Jesse Lingard and made up a place in the squad. You could have got rid of Donny on loan early. You could have said, right, we want you to go for a year somewhere. But what did they do? They kept him and stuck him on the bench. And then there's a lot of fringe players, isn't there?
Why were they giving him a new contract?
They give him a new contract because they're trying to protect his value and all of this. And he doesn't play. And it's like, well, I know why he doesn't play. He isn't good enough. But why keep him? Don't keep players that don't help you. Wan Mata, he was going to go. There was offers for Wan Mata. And United were like, we'd rather you stayed. And he went, all right, I'll stay. I'm on good money. Yeah, thanks a lot. So it's not Wan Mata's fault, but this is the Man United board, isn't it? So you had that opportunity to make an 8 out of 10 window and a 10 or 11 or a 12 and really help Ole Gunnar Solskjaer go from second to a title challenger. What happened was that they thought they had enough and they fell off a cliff. And that was it. And that comes from the very, very top echelon of management from the board. So, yes, it's been an awful season. We've seen for the first time, I think, even since Sir Alex, Man United teams just give up, just like actually get hammered 3 and 4-0 against teams that we would never see before. And that's a stain on these characters, but it's also a stain on the club because this is the culture they are creating. So, Erik ten Hag, on day one, it's literally give him the keys to the car and say, you get on and drive it, mate, because we haven't done a good job here as a board. And how much money do you need? You want that player. Oh, we've never heard of him.
He's going to need about 200 million, Rob. 200.
Well, look, but you just put about Casado, 5 million quid. Yeah. You don't need, this is the thing, right? Man United will spend money. Man United spent over 1.25 billion on players. Let's get away from this thing about Man United don't spend money. They spend money like no one else spends money. More than City, more than Liverpool, a lot more than Liverpool. The difference is, Haider, they spend it badly. Go and find your Casados for your 5 million. Find your squad players that can give you minutes and can help you. Go and find the top players as well that can help you, but don't spend 6 months, crying about Haaland before he goes to Man City. Go and find the next player. Go and get Nunes. Knock on his door. Make the 40, 50, 60 million pound bid. You can afford it. You've got the money. Do it. Get it done properly. So that's what I hope happens with Ten Hag, is that he will identify players that a lot of our audience here just don't know. They won't have heard of him. But he'll be like, I've been scouting this player in Cameroon for 2 years and he's really good. So I'm going to get him. And he only costs 2 million quid. And he'll come on a really low wage and rip it up. And we'll be like, my God, there is value in the market. Fergie once said there isn't. That was a lie. It was to protect the owners spending at that point. There is lots of value in the market. So many good players out there that you just need to go and find. So that's the next step now, Haider. Get rid of the players that are on inflated wages that don't help you. Go and find young, hungry talent. Just like Ralph said weeks and months ago, get players on their first contract who are going to help you and are going to die for this football badge on their chest. And then, do you know what? There'll be no Man United fans singing, "You're not fit to wear the shirt." It won't happen. Because even if you lose and you give it for us, Haider, you're going to get applauded. You're going to get the love of the fans. And that's the next step, isn't it? Ten Hag has to prove that his team can actually earn the affection of Manchester United supporters.
It's a great point. And it's for example, you're looking at Kamara from Marseille. He's on a free right now. United are not looking at these sort of players. You don't need to go and spend 100 million. Look, I absolutely love Declan Rice. So I don't know if the fee's worth it. I don't think he is worth that fee. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that doesn't mean he's a bad player. He's a top
pay
player.
It. Get him. Pay it.
If you're going to go and fix the other areas of the squad as well, yes.
I'm John Murto, and now obviously Judge is gone, so he won't do any negotiating. He's gone out the picture. If I'm running the football club, I'm going to go and bang on Declan Rice's door until he answers it. And I'm going to say, we will make you one of the highest paid players in the world. We believe in you. We're going to make you the captain. We're going to make this midfield about you. And your job is to come to Man United and win every trophy every year. That is your job. Don't come here and jog. If you're a jogger, we don't want you. But he's not a jogger. I think he's looking at his running stats the other day, and I think he's in the top 5 midfielders in the Premier League. And the people are not quite sure about that. They'll be like, is he a runner? Yes, he's a runner. But that's just part of it. Come and be a winner. Take this club back to where it should be. And if it costs 120 million, who cares? This is the richest club in the world. This club has got money to burn. It's just that the Glazers spend it in different ways on bad players. You know what I mean? They'll give Ronaldo £50 million in 2 years, Haider, because he scored you 18 goals, but you're coming 6th. So go and get players that really, really want it and are hungry. I want Declan Rice. Go and get Declan Rice. He's the best in class. I could not give two you-know-whats about him being English. I know people get upset about it, or an English player. He's nothing like Harry Maguire. Declan Rice gets in every team in the world, the top teams. That's how good he's going to be. And he's already there. Pay it. Pay the money. And go and buy Ruben Neves at the same time. Get them, sort them both out. And go and get Casado now. It might cost you 50 million. But go and get the players that can actually help you, rather than sticking with these inflated superstars that basically their ego does not deserve to be wearing our football shirt. It just does not. They're not the kind of right ego. Do you know what I mean? They're all about themselves and about the money, and they don't work hard enough. You need players that work.
I think my final word on this, Rob, to be honest with you, is that what Ten Hag actually has to do as well is bridge that disconnect with the fans again. It is probably at its lowest ebb that I've ever seen it as a fan. Build that trust again between the players, make the squad likable again. That's his biggest challenge. And I think on the whole, majority of the fans will back Ten Hag over these players, and that's how it should be. The question is, will the board do that as well? They'll have to do that. But that's the first thing for me as well. Get that trust back. And Ten Hag is a stickler for detail. He's a stickler for hard work. He's a stickler about the system being the king, and system is important. And if players don't do that, and you see, do you remember that clip that was going around of that player? He was telling that player to run. Remember? You seen that one that's going around, telling him to run?
Yeah.
And if I'm the boss, you run. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I was reading the backstory. That player was shipped out. And that's how it has to be. And I have no doubt that Ten Hag is going to do that.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing for me. Get them to run, get these guys passing the ball properly, get them organized, and then we build from there. And I don't have much expectations. If we get top 4, and we have a good cup run, or we win a cup, I'll be pretty content for a first season.
Let's end on one really good example of that, of what you're saying. Romelu Lukaku, big signing for Man United, came to sign for Jose Mourinho, was going to be the central figure of number 9, scored lots of goals at Everton, was ready to kind of take the next step. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer said to him, I need you to run more. He refused to run more. Ole put a gun to his head and got rid of him very, 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 very quickly. That's what Ten Hag's going to have to do. Ten Hag's going to have to come in and say, this is my philosophy. And part of my philosophy is hard work. And if you don't want to work for me, whether you're Cristiano or a Langer, anywhere in the middle, you will not play for this football club. You'll be sold and you'll be told where the door is, and I will walk you there hand to hand and push you out of it, because there are millions of players that will run for Man United across the world, millions who will want to play for this badge and for this football club. This lot as a collective do not want to do it. They don't want to do it. They're on big wages. They get away with murder. They now need to be shown the door. And there's too many of them that are average, that don't work hard enough, and just do not have for the love of the football club. And that means something, Haider, in the modern day. You talked about Lautaro earlier in the show. Go and get him. Go and sign him. He's going to leave Inter probably. Yeah, you could get him for around 65, 70 million at the moment. He could be your next Tevez, the player that runs and scores and just embodies your football club. He would be brilliant at United. Don't let him go to Arsenal. Don't let him go to a rival. Go and get him. He's the kind of player that can really do big things for you. And now we have to build for the future, but it starts on day one. When Ten Hag walks in the door, we've got to start that process really, really quickly.
Absolutely. Look, guys, thank you for all your comments as well. It's not been an easy season at all. Myself and Rob have to sit here after every single game and break them down. But we're really, really, really honoured and grateful for all your support, especially, with a lot of the player analysis shows that we're doing recently. They've been a great hit, and there will be more coming next week and over the next couple of weeks. So make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well. Rob, any last words before we clock off? Because we probably will be back. Obviously, our game's in 2 weeks' time. We'll do a few things. We'll do more Ten Hag focused ones as well. As the season comes to a close and the summer comes to a head.
The focus for us on our channel and everything that we do going forward now is about this transition, about the process, because we want to see what Ten Hag does, and we're going to hold Ten Hag to account. Don't get for a second that because we're saying, give him time, and we do want him to have time. We want him to have that big window to be able to change things. We are going to take it match by match like usual, but we're going to look at targets and we're going to talk about the players that he can go and get that will make United better. We did it with Julian Alvarez, and we did a big thing on it because we knew that the scouting network were on him, because we'd heard about it. There was tangible evidence that United was scouting him and they wanted him and they were going to go for him. And Man City then jumped in and bought him. So we want to do that with our show, give you an insight into some of the players that the club are looking at. And thankfully, we do get those insights. So we will share them with you. So stick with us. Please subscribe. Please share. Obviously, thank you for all the social media interaction, everything that you do with us. And obviously coming on the show when we do live shows like this and commenting, because that's what it's all about. It's about getting you guys together and being able to talk about these things. It may be a more straight, salient way than you get with other channels who want to shout, who want to scream, who want to kind of go boo-hoo-hoo. We all want to cry at the moment about Man United. But if you don't laugh about it, you're definitely going to cry. And we've got a new coach coming, so change is just around the corner.
And look, unfortunately, life is bigger than Manchester United. Don't let it get you down. Go outside. The weather's beautiful here in Dublin. Go outside wherever you are in the world. Go and enjoy it. Go and spend time. Go and have fun. And don't let these guys on the pitch bring you down, because, they don't really care. But hopefully next season, Rob, Ten Hag will be able to turn that around. He'll get these guys playing. It'll be Ten Hag's Red Army. I'm excited, to be honest with you. I'm cautious, but I'm excited. But look, guys, as always, give myself a follow at Haider_Rubbani. Give Rob a follow at _Rob_B. And give us a follow at TF Masterclass as well on Twitter. We're putting all the short clips up as well. And a lot more content will be pushed through there. So make sure you give a follow to keep up to date. Stay positive, guys. And we'll see you all next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.